Well, my name is Dr. Adolphus Ike. I was actually a graduate of Dashawne University, where I did my doctoral work in education, and my thesis was on the differences that international students face, in the community colleges when they arrive here in the U.S. The American culture differs from the Nigerian culture in several ways, even though there are some similarities. For example, just like here in the US, you have people from different backgrounds. You have Italian Americans, Polish Americans, African Americans, and people from different areas. So the cultures here seem to differ. But what makes the American culture unique is that this is like a melting point where all these cultures emerge together to form what we may call the American culture. It's the same thing with the Nigerian situation too, because over there are many ethnic groups, and each ethnic group have their own way of life, even though we can all emerge together and still call it the Nigerian culture. So there lies the similarity actually between the two. But in the case of Nigerian situation, from my own perspective, having lived on both sides of the Atlantic, I can see here that one thing that Nigerians differ from what we see here is that the family, the Nigerian family seems to be, we take the Nigerian family situation very seriously. The behavior, the way that your family members act is very important to the members of that family. So, and every family member works hard and makes sure that they do the right thing, and make sure that they do not do anything that really will make the family or give the family a very bad image or a bad name. In our own situation there, I think we make sure that our children are properly trained. They go to school, they must be in school, and they must work hard to graduate. So the graduation rate is absolutely very high, and as parents we must make sure that our children behave very well and are properly raised, so that as they go through the school system, you don't see issues like dropouts, you don't see issues like children having children, or you don't see issues like many unmarried girls having children here and there. So part of the culture is that people, the family tries to raise the children very well, make sure that they grow up as responsible adults, and the ladies all grow up and get married at the appropriate time and then have children or their own families, but not necessarily having many children out of wedlock. That is not part of Nigerian culture. Unfortunately, we see a lot of it here, where many kids drop out of school, and many young women having children, and also many young men also having children, without being ready. That is one major issue. Another thing that I can think of here in terms of the cultural difference is the idea of people really looking up to one another, people trying to find people of all kinds of life that they emulate. For example, here we have many of the kids here seem to look up to sports stars, to artists, people who make music and stuff like that. But in the Nigerian situation, it's totally different. You want to look up to engineers, you want to look up to physicists, you want to look up to people in academia, rather than looking up to people in sports or people in music. The children look up to people with different, professions, rather than sports and music. That's another thing. And of course, in our own situation, like I mentioned before, every woman ideals to get married and to have her own family. Every man or every young man aspires to be married and to have his family too. Unlike the situation we have here, where it doesn't seem to be a very, very big issue for many people. I think pretty much that is that. When I arrived here in the US, being from Nigeria, Nigeria is an English-speaking country, so it wasn't as difficult for me to communicate with people. The only difference was that, in Nigeria we speak British English. Here we have the American English. People don't understand that in some words in British English are different from the American version of English. So it took a while for me to differentiate between the two versions of English language. It wasn't difficult to communicate, but it took a little while to be able to revise and refine my own English to the American system. But then once that was done, it wasn't really very difficult to communicate with people. Also, it wasn't as hard because here in the US, it's like we say, it's a melting pot. You have African Americans, Hispanics, Caucasians, people from all walks of life. So it was very easy for me to mix up with all kinds of people, especially when I went to college. So the assimilation and the mixing up was pretty much very easy. It wasn't very difficult. So it pretty much wasn't difficult for me to communicate, being that I came from an English-speaking country.
Do you feel like Americans treated you any differently because you were from Nigeria?
Well, initially, actually, there weren't many issues, but I had some encounters, pretty much on the street where people kind of mimicked the way I spoke, speaking with accent and things like that. Sometimes I had to educate people that people from different parts of the world have their own accent. Even when you leave the US and go to another country, you have an accent. Just like people leaving their country and coming here have their own accent. So it's a world issue. It's not an American issue. It's a world issue. So I had to let people understand, especially those when I was in college, to know that the world does not really revolve only around the US. That you need to go out, to see other parts of the world, and from there you can learn one or two things. And it was very easy to really communicate with people that came from different parts of the world